Welcome to episode 103 of Trek Live. A little bit different this week. It's pre-recorded. Bill and I just have a lot going on this weekend, so we figured we'd want to put some Star Trek content out there. A little discussion between Bill and I, just because there's some stuff to talk about. Bill, what are we talking about tonight?
We're gonna talk about all the news. There's been a lot happening in the world of Star Trek
Yes.
since the last time we were live with Rob on last weekend, I guess, from the time we're recording this.
Yep.
We recorded the morning of New York Comic Con's Star Trek stuff, so we had to do something to kind of respond to all the stuff that came out over the past. On that day, on Saturday afternoon. So, yeah, this weekend doesn't really work for us scheduling wise to do anything live, so we thought we'd come on tonight,
Yes.
record some thoughts, and put them out around the time that we usually would go live. We don't love the non-live format because it's contrary to what we usually do.
Yep.
But desperate times call for desperate measures, and we're excited to talk about all the news in whatever format. So we'll get back to live content very soon. And for now, we're just going to dive right in, and we're not going to get into a whole lot of rewatch stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to dive right into the news, make this concise and targeted to directly address the news of the week, I guess.
Yeah.
So we have two trailers to talk about.
Yep.
And we have two shorts. There was a short that debuted last Saturday, the Saturday of the panel, and we're recording this on Thursday night, and a second short dropped today. So we're going to cover those four things, starting with the 1 minute and 10 second, I think, trailer for Discovery Season 3.
I'd call it a teaser.
It's very much.
I'd call it a teaser, but yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I'll ask you first. Like, what were your overall impressions from what little we did see? It's very much teaser. There's not a whole lot to really chew on yet. There's some tonal stuff, and there's a little there, but we obviously still have a lot to learn about where the show's going. But what are your overall impressions?
Overall impressions, loved it. It did its job. It is very much a teaser. There's not a whole lot of story we can kind of gather from it, but there is some direction. To me, the thing that first popped into my head was this is new. This is a new direction, not just for the show Discovery, but for Star Trek in general. Because if you guys remember, spoilers, season 2, we're way into the future. We don't know anything. This is a sandbox of where Star Trek Discovery is going with the franchise. So it's all new stuff. So that's my first kind of thoughts on the trailer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things we talked about as season 2 kind of came to a close and it became evident that we're going way into the future is that for the first time really in Star Trek's history, I guess maybe going back to the beginning of TNG, we're taking a big jump forward in time, and such an extreme jump forward that for the first time ever, we're kind of like, what does it even look like? What kind of story is it? What the possibilities really are endless, and they can really shake things up and get away with really anything. Even more so than I think even the Kelvin timeline lended itself to shaking things up. Even that was still pretty tied to some degree of continuity. They had a clean slate on one hand, but not so much still on the other. This really gives them the agency to do whatever they want, and I think this teaser kind of promises that from a storytelling standpoint, at least. It seems evident that the Federation's really downsized. They have that shot of the flag of the Federation coming down. There's only 6 stars on it, which seems to imply that it's a
That's how many members.
It's a scaled down version. It remains a mystery who those members are. Knowing Trek and this version of Trek, like this iteration, it's probably not the 6 species that we would assume. I'm guessing. I'm sure there's somebody that maybe we would guess would be there, that one of those founding members, or a few of those founding members, or maybe all of those founding members, the Andorians, the Vulcans, the Tellarites, that maybe are not in such good standing with humanity. and with each other. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but we have some impression of what the struggle is going to be. It seems the Federation's really scaled back. Like I said, maybe really damaged. Hasn't grown in the way that people in the 24th century would hope that it would.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a mission of the Discovery kind of having to bring the ideals and the hope of what the Federation was meant to be and what it was in its prime to the future, and to hopefully maybe bring it back, is what I kind of took away from it. That seems to be sort of the arc of the season, maybe that they're setting up.
I just, my first thoughts are they're trying to figure out, they've lost their way a little bit. How do we get back on track, moving forward? But yeah, it definitely, the trailer, I find myself asking a lot of questions, which I think is good. So, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely leads to a lot of questions, which for a teaser trailer is kind of the mission. It's designed to get you intrigued and make you want to know what's going on, what directions it's going in, by just teasing you with little hints. There's definite evidence of Trill involvement.
Yes.
There's that really cool throwback to there's a Deep Space Nine episode where they go to the Trill homeworld, and they're in like a cavern where there's a pool, and Trill symbionts are in there, and it looks an awful lot like that exact sort of idea. I don't know if it's the exact same place, 900 years into the future, but it's pretty much confirmed that there's going to be Trill involvement, which begs the question, is the Dax symbiont still around? Is there a possibility that there's an extension of that character coming? That's an obvious want for a lot of people, that some fan wanky kind of stuff that people would, I think, eat up. But that's an interesting idea too. I mean, the idea of the Trill being involved as I can't claim credit for this, but I've seen it speculated in a lot of the conversation that's been happening since the trailer leaked, or came out, not leaked. That the Trill offer an opportunity for firsthand knowledge of what the past looked like, and not just like historical record. If Discovery wants to get caught up on what's been happening, or they want to be able to point to, this is the way it should be done because it was successful, in our time, getting the buy-in of somebody with firsthand knowledge and memory from those things, from those times, might make some sense. So I think I'm excited for the return of the Trill, and that concept. There hasn't been a whole lot of that since Deep Space Nine. That's one of the few, not few. There's quite a few things that are kind of specific to Deep Space Nine, like concepts, alien species, things like that. But the Trill are definitely very unique to Deep Space Nine for the most part.
We could potentially hear some old man one-liners, maybe.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. There's a lot of stuff that I think there's a lot of ground that is ripe for exploring there. There's a screenshot that got. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, finish. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say there's a screenshot that everybody kind of is like latching onto, with the species that are chasing Burnham and this new character book.
Yes.
On the planet, and there's a Lurian, which is Morin's species, which was really cool to see. And in the background, it looks an awful lot. Morin lives. It might be Morin. We don't know how long they live. They have all those internal organs that we learn about in Deep Space Nine. So maybe they do. Maybe they live a long time. But we see one of Morin's people. We see what looks like, in the background, it's a little fuzzy, but it looks like a Cardassian, very traditionally Cardassian.
Yes.
So there's some cool indications that they're not going to play with makeup very much. It's going to be what you expect from old school Trek. Like in terms of like introducing some of those species that we haven't seen yet in new Star Trek. Like the Cardassians, like the Lurians, which is sort of the last species I think anybody would expect to see, like on a planet, chasing our heroes around with guns. So a lot of interesting possibilities, but it's a short trailer with not a whole lot of context. It's definitely very much a teaser,
Yes.
but it left me wanting more and excited to see where they're going.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the character Booker, or what was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's gonna be. They stated that he's gonna be kind of the guide for Burnham and the crew and us
Mm-hmm.
into this new time that we've never been. So that's
Yeah.
one thing that they have said, which kind of is cool that we're getting another character, but also kind of a guide. Which will be fun. So
Discovery's version of Neelix, maybe.
yes, maybe. Yep.
We'll see if he becomes a morale officer too and
Yeah.
a cook.
Yeah,
Maybe
warm up
he'll
the hot tubs.
follow
And,
Neelix's
yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
all purpose.
Yes.
But yeah, he looks cool. I think that
Yeah.
character looks. I love the line that he has to Burnham about he's seeing ghosts with the logo,
Yeah.
which kind of implies like maybe Starfleet's not around anymore. The Federation's sort of around, but that's a Starfleet logo. That's specific to Starfleet, not the Federation. And
Yeah.
I think that line maybe implies that Starfleet maybe while the Federation's kind of hanging in there as a small fragment of its former self. Maybe Starfleet's a thing of the past, and that's sort of Discovery's purpose in this time now is to bring back that ideal and those principles and that mission. And I think that'd be kind of cool. I think if you look at the course of Discovery up to this point, season 1 sort of putting those principles to the test in wartime and in difficult, challenging times with a captain who's kind of pushing against those.
He's walking that fine line. Yeah.
He's walking that very, very fine line and sometimes crossing it. And then coming back in season 2 with Pike really kind of championing those ideals and instilling why Starfleet is what it is and the need for it, and then having to take those lessons into the future and to save I guess humanity maybe in the future. It's a speculation on my part, but it certainly makes sense as an arc, I think, to see that extend that way. So excited for more Discovery. Anybody who watches us knows that we like Discovery. This is a pro Discovery show for the very most part.
Yes.
We're critical where it needs to be, where we need to be. But on balance, we're fans of the show, and we look forward to seeing more from it.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Cool.
Yeah.
What about Picard? That's certainly the trailer that made a little bit more news because it's a little more meaty.
Yes.
It's a little longer. It offers a little bit more detail. Less of a teaser than the Discovery trailer, perhaps.
More of a trailer, I think. Yeah.
More of a full-blown trailer. And we're getting close. It premieres on January 23rd. We learned that.
Yes.
So it's not that far away. 4 months goes by really fast. So it'll be here before we know it. But what did you take away from this trailer?
I think it just keeps my kind of the forest fire in what I think is going to happen. Keep it going and kind of answering some questions, but maybe making me ask more.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's very exciting, but
it is. Well, there's definitely a degree of like mystery.
Yes, still.
And
Which
very much so. And it seems like they're really playing heavily into this question of who is this young girl? How does she relate to Picard? What's the relationship? What's the history there? And both trailers have kind of leaned heavily into that.
Yeah.
And so there is definitely a degree of what's going on. A lot of unanswered questions that kind of are clearly designed to draw us in. And I suspect that maybe I'm wrong, that we'll probably get some of those answers pretty early on. I have a feeling we'll probably get an idea of like what that relationship is pretty early in the show. So I think that might be more of a marketing, like get people excited in the ramp up to the show kind of thing than like a mystery that's going to pull us through the season. But it certainly works. It makes me intrigued. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff that we could gather from. I mean, obviously, the girl comes to Picard. He goes to Starfleet. Logically, I mean, this is a seasoned Starfleet captain, admiral. He goes to someone he trusts. It seems like they don't back him, and he has to go rogue. So I think that's kind of the direction they're going. There's some cool stuff with the Borg, the Romulan. Data's back in this trailer. I think answers a few questions that we all had We can unpack that as
How
well.
that's gonna work.
But yeah, there's looking like there's some android, Borg, Romulan stuff going on. So I think it's shaping up to be pretty cool. And seven,
Yeah.
dual wielding. Yeah, it's all everything is
Mm-hmm.
is falling into place to, I don't know, make a cool show. So
You're right. A lot of the stuff you just laid out, I think it's Data you kind of alluded to, but there's other characters that get shown in this trailer that brought about a lot of reaction and people are talking about
yes.
and they're excited about. And it's easy to emphasize those things, but you just kind of rattled it off. There's clear Borg involvement. There's clear Romulan stuff. There's
Yes.
there's cybernetic like android stuff. This one character played by Alison Peel, who's one of the few members of the cast outside of Patrick Stewart that I've like seen in other things.
Yeah.
Plays like the cybernetic doctor. Uh, she's clearly got some sort of a project going on.
Yes.
With androids or cybernetics. So there's that. So there's a lot going on outside of just kind of bringing old faces back and,
Yes.
and reuniting Picard with old characters, which is encouraging to me. I want to see those things, believe me, as much as anybody. But
yeah.
I get the impression that the show is going to be much more than that. There's going to be real Star Trek plot playing out here as well.
Yeah, and I think Patrick Stewart and the whole team has said from the beginning that this is not going to be a TNG reunion. Yes, we're going to bring back some familiar faces, but yeah, like you said, it's more than just a reunion show. It's going to be Star Trek.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's not the 8th season of TNG.
No,
20
no,
years
no,
later.
no.
It's not about that. This is a specific story that Picard happens to be involved with, and is a continuation of his story. And of course, there is some connective tissue with other characters from his past that we'll get introduced to and reacquainted with. But it does seem to be shaping up to be its own thing, which is exciting and reassuring. One of the things that I took away from the trailer, and it seemed pretty obvious in the last one too, but I'm very encouraged by the approach to avoid having Picard be sort of the reluctant participant in all this. Like it doesn't seem like he's being dragged.
Yeah.
He wants to be out
He
there.
wants to be out there. Yeah.
Yes.
It
seems very clear that
Yeah.
he's not comfortable in retirement. That he's kind of bored, just kind of sitting at home on the winery.
Yeah. Which I like that because I feel like we've seen that trope so many times where they,
Yes.
we have nowhere to turn. We got to go back to this old salty character. We've seen that. I think part of it too is maybe a little bit Patrick Stewart feels the same way. He doesn't. I think he's still acting, I believe, but he probably does feel a little bit like Picard does. He doesn't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. He wants to get back in the game. So
keep going. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a reassuring direction.
Yes.
That I think a lot of people were, maybe not a lot of people, but some people that I know were kind of nervous about the show taking the approach of the kind of, like you said, very cliche, old school approach of, here we're gonna have an old character that we got to like slowly pull back into the game, and over the course of the season he'll like evolve into a hero again.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that's the direction we're going in. It seems like he's principled from the beginning. He's convincing Starfleet, you guys are on the wrong track. You're in the wrong.
Yeah.
He has that big, it seems like a classic Picard speech lecturing an admiral about, you guys are reffing up here. You're not, your eyes off the ball, and you're not standing up for what Starfleet or the Federation should be, which is classic Picard stuff. So
Yeah.
That's all encouraging.
Yeah. I kind of got a little bit of All Good Thing vibes too, where
Sure.
Picard, he is when he's in like the older segment, he is wanting to get back into to figure something out. So I feel like it's similar in that way. That's what I kind of got when I was watching the first teaser and this trailer. So
it's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That people I didn't think about, but an answer to a lot of the fears that the show is going to take the approach of, he's going to be a reluctant participant, in All Good Things, when they kind of played this hand before. That's not what they did. The character was very eager to get out there and wasn't happy kind of sitting on the sideline.
Yeah.
Was going around and convincing other people to get involved.
Yeah.
He had to drag some of our regular character.
Jordy's like, oh no, it's your sickness or
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm
He's
done
like,
with
no,
this.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I gotta go. It's
Yeah, it's everybody else that doesn't want to be involved. So there are definite echoes, I think, there, and some consistencies with how Picard handles retirement.
Yes. Yep.
Which is cool. Very cool. Yep. And that's one of the things we've talked about going back to, I think, when the first trailer came out, and maybe even earlier when this show was kind of announced. What kind of connections is this going to have with All Good Things? Like, how are they going to play with the All Good Things? Kind of the parallels, and are things going to be consistent or inconsistent with what we saw in the future with All Good Things? And that is one thing that I think, whether it's like really leaned into and really emphasized in the show or not, we're kind of already getting a taste of, which is really cool. So nice call on your part.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people focus on Nemesis and the connections to Nemesis, which they have every right to. I definitely see that track to Nemesis, but
yeah, I agree. So you kind of mentioned early on in kind of an earlier comment that what we saw from Data in the trailer might answer some questions about, like, who is it? Data? Is it before? Is it, like, Brent Spiner's already kind of said that it's Data, it's not before. So we pretty much knew that, but, like, how does this work? And is it just straight up dreams? Is it the thing that Captain Ransom's wearing in Equinox to see, what he wants to see? He's got that device that's kind of like a hologram in his head. Like, is it something like that where Picard's choosing to interact with, like, a version of Data subconsciously, or is it just straight up he sees Data in his dreams? But it seems to be going in that direction. It's not. The trailer doesn't imply that it's like he walked into arranged to see Data. There might be a little bit more to it than that. It seems to be a subconscious thing in Picard's head.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to go that route. I don't think they're going to bring him back for good. I think it's just, like you said, somehow he's going to be interacting through Picard, where we will see Data, not like the actual character physically will be back, come back to life. So yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if Data is acting Picard's conscience in all these things. Like, one of the things that Data kind of always brought to the table in TNG was his childlike innocence. His perspective was so kind of pure that even when Picard might be tempted to kind of, not necessarily go off track, but kind of get cynical, or make the uncompassionate move, Data's innocence and childlike view of things would often kind of pull Picard back in,
reel him back in.
Yes. So I'm thinking maybe it's Picard's way of either consciously or subconsciously, keeping pointed in the right direction, and keeping that perspective, not having Data to lean on in those ways maybe is costing Picard something, and this is his way of keeping that going. We'll see if that's right, or I wouldn't be surprised if that's the kind of direction they're going, keeping Data involved.
I also love that it's classic TNG imagery, Data painting.
Yes.
Like, oh man, that just hits right at home for me, and probably for everyone. So I love that they did that.
I was saying that even though you can't, like, it's just shots of arms, literally, like the shot of him handing the paintbrush to Picard and just seeing, like, the yellow and the red, like the sleeves of the uniforms, like handing something to each other. It's like, so it's such TNG imagery that I didn't expect to see.
Which we saw in the first teaser, right? They're playing cards, right? I mean, there's some imagery there too, but this was like almost a little bit more to that spectrum, which I love.
The TNG uniforms, certainly play a part in that.
Yes.
But yeah, it was interesting to see how they're doing that, and I think interesting storytelling possibilities.
Yes.
What about the other characters that we sort of got a glimpse of from old school TNG? Obviously, we get a little tease of Riker, a little less
family
of a tease
man.
of Troy. Yes. Yeah. Riker and Troy had a kid.
Yes.
It's kind of revealed in this. Interesting development that I didn't really see coming. I don't know why I didn't see it coming, but I didn't. It surprised me.
Yeah. I
But
I think it's smart because in my head canon, Will Riker is a career officer. He doesn't want to. He's always chosen his career. Um, if there's anything to make him settle down, I feel like it would be a kid.
yeah,
This might be reading
could
too
very well
much
be.
into it, but because of his relationship with his father and how that went down, I feel like he would, maybe
Not want to do that.
exactly. So, people joked
Great call.
online that it was kind of generations esque. The cabin that they were in, he was cooking.
Hmm. Cooking. Yeah.
So it hit me right in the feels because I feel like there was a lot of action like this kind of before the we got to see that there was a bunch of action, and then once we got to like the Riker household, everything slowed down and there was emotional music. Everyone's
Yeah.
hugging.
Hmm.
Um, so I loved
Yeah.
it. I loved that part.
Me too.
Yes.
Definitely. To be completely honest, it's definitely my favorite part of the trailer. It's the most memorable thing in the trailer.
Yes.
And just seeing those two characters on screen together for somebody like me who grew up loving these people and didn't really ever expect to see more stuff with these two people um, is amazing. Like I just 2 years ago, if somebody would have suggested the possibility that you might get more Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, Picard, Riker stuff, I certainly I wouldn't have believed it. I thought, no way.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
really really encouraging and exciting to see that it's actually happening. So the other thing, real quick, to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, what brought Riker home, like what made him settle down. I think that's a great call. That having a child, you have to think that, like a lot of people do, you try to learn from maybe the mistakes of your parents, and
Exactly. Yes.
he's not going to do the same thing that uh, his dad did. And he's clearly in that single episode that we kind of deal with it that I just watched, very broken up by that, and that seriously impacted him as a person. And so it makes perfect sense that that's one thing. The other thing, though, is just maybe me reading into Picard, you know, yelling at an admiral about Starfleet should be doing this differently, or Federation should you're not holding true to the Federation's ideals. Um, Something tells me maybe we'll get something like in the aftermath of this Romulus disaster and whatever the fallout of that is. Yeah, like there may have been a seismic shift in the Federation's direction and the way that it conducts itself post Dominion War, post Romulus destroyed, post all these things, all these radical shifts. I wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, some of these old dogs, Picard, Riker, people who lived in a different time,
lost the Enterprise, the D, the Titan, whatever. Yeah, this is out. Yeah,
it's not surprising under the circumstances that maybe Picard or maybe Riker isn't captaining a ship or even an admiral. Late into life, he maybe walked away to start a family and live a little bit more of a grounded life with Deanna and young Will Jr. or something.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of possibilities there, and the fact that already without anything more than a couple of trailers to think about, all these things to kind of chew on.
That's what we do here. We read too much into things, and then
But it tells you I think it tells you that the concept is sound.
Yes.
That setting of the show is sound. Like there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot to chew on. And this is the exciting part about doing a show like this that's set post all this Star Trek stuff that we know all about. Like
because we don't,
moving in the future,
we don't
there's
know
a
what
lot
happened
of things
there.
that you can.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of history to call back to, and things that you can
Build
extrapolate from, and it's exciting. It's really really. I can't wait to see if they go in these kinds of directions that we're kind of talking about, or if it's something completely different. I'm open-minded to pretty much anything, but I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else on Picard before we kind
of? That there is. Maybe this is between just Bill and I, but there's a lot of very accurate fan theory out there, and everybody's speculating. So, some more believable than others, but just take it with a grain of salt. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton out there. There's some YouTube videos that have a lot of hits.
Yes.
That we've watched. that presents some really interesting theories that that could be completely right on, or could be half right or not right at all.
Yeah.
And that's half the fun of this, kind of trying to guess. We did the same thing with Discovery.
Exactly.
I remember doing this. You and I had these same kinds of conversations leading up to Discovery, trying to figure it out and guess and predict things. And some things we were kind of right on, some things not so much. And the same goes for everybody else. So it's the exciting part of this period of time in the lead up to a new show. I'm enjoying it, and I can't wait to see how it all turns out.
Yes. So yeah, that was definitely some big news. They rolled out a lot of Star Trek content. What other content rolled out that weekend?
We got the first of 6 new short treks that are gonna lead up to the beginning of Picard. 2 this week, really. 1 on Saturday, 1 tonight as we're recording this Thursday.
Yep.
We get 1 at the beginning or the middle of November, 1 in December. No, 2 in December. 2 animated in December, and 1 in January before a few weeks before Picard premieres.
Yep.
So, as of the time of this recording, we've seen 2 short treks. The first 2, Q&A and Trouble with Edward. So we're going to talk about each. We're going to share our thoughts. They're short. They're 15 minutes.
Yep.
There's not a whole ton to talk about. We don't want to overanalyze and spend a whole lot of time dissecting these things, but very eager to hear your thoughts on both. So what did you think of Q&A first?
I loved Q&A. It's probably my favorite. I can confidently say that it's my favorite short trek of all the short treks that we've seen from this season, from last season. So I think it was a fun, kind of cute story. They kind of had, everything laughing, technobabble. It hit out everything. And it kind of hit. I liked it because it hit on a character that we know a lot about and that we don't know a lot about. And I feel like if you asked anyone, Bill, me, anyone, it would be a Q&A about people we don't know and much about. Like, we don't know about number 1 a whole lot. So I think that was just kind of a fun kind of way to introduce this character that we've seen before, but we don't know a whole lot about. So it was kind of a fun, way to kind of, introduce the characters and shed a different, I guess okay, let me slow down. I'm really excited. It shed a different light on Spock, a different take on Spock, because this is, he's an ensign. He's
early.
He's very green behind the ears. So I loved it.
Me
Did that
too,
make any
for all
sense?
the same reasons. It made a lot of sense. I echo a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think it did a really cool job of like putting a character that we know a ton about and maybe is the most developed, most used character in Star Trek's history.
Yes.
In the oldest Star Trek of the Cage and in the newest Star Trek at the end of Discovery, season 2.
Yes.
Tons and tons and tons of Spock, and then you have a character who is kind of little used, but is popular and people want to know more about, and puts them on like a level playing field, and it does the classic: put 2 people in an elevator and see what happens. Just kind of all dialogue, conversation, and see what happens with revealing things about the characters. And I think I don't know that we learned anything brand new about Spock. I think it illustrated
him as an ensign.
yeah, and it sort of sets him off on the path he's going to take, the way he's going to conduct himself, the way he's going to be as a Starfleet officer. He's going to be protective with himself and not show too much, and he's going to embrace his Vulcan side, but he's going to keep a lot of things hidden, just like number 1 does. I think he learns from number 1 that's not uncommon. That's a struggle that a lot of people have. That there are things about people that you don't necessarily know, and you have to struggle to keep things to yourself. And the reason I love this short so much is I relate to it in a very real, personal way. I go to work every day.
Explain.
I go to work every day. uh, with a bunch of people who know me very well, um, but have zero idea that the most important thing in my life since I've been an infant has been Star Trek. Like, I just don't talk about it. It's something that they don't know. I'm very protective with it. I was that way in school growing up, and I've been that way in my career. It's just, if you know me personally and you know I like Star Trek the way that I do, you really know me. Like, you're in the circle of very intimate like friends. So when number one shows that side of herself, Gilbert and Sullivan singing, like, when she does that and she like shuts off and says, "You can't tell anybody." Like, this is that's me. Like, I live that every day, and I get what they're talking about, and I've always related to Spock in those sorts of ways too. But seeing number one kind of explain it and really, it really worked on me. I didn't expect to relate to it the way that I did. Yeah, I loved it. I loved the way that, like I said, sort of puts Spock on his track.
Dang it! I was hoping I was like, man, I might not have to edit this. I could just go straight to upload. Nope. That's frustrating. Whatever. Okay. Can you get back into
Where did I? Any idea? Or where do you want me to start? Like, where do you want me to?
You were just like, it was a closing statement on Q&A. You were like, yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. I think it was. I echo your sentiment that it's the best of the short tracks.
Yes,
so
it
far.
is.
And a lot of it is. It's. I think it takes advantage of the ability that the short tracks have shown to, like, sort of play with tone and be irreverent and not necessarily be doing anything groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And like earth shattering, no high stakes, just simple stuff. You know, I've seen people knock it for, why didn't they just beam out of the turbo lift? Like, I don't care about any of that. It's a short. It's designed to, like, build the universe a little bit, play with characters, do some fun, silly stuff.
Yeah.
I don't need it to be, like, perfectly refined in terms of what works on the ship and how to get people out of situations. For the 15 minutes I watched it, I was in love with it, and I've watched it a few times already. I've gone back to it. Definitely my favorite short track.
Yes. I echo what you just said also, but I love that it can be so powerful in such a short amount of time. And that's we attribute, the writing, the characters, obviously, but, everything. It's just kind of unbelievable that can be done. So, yeah.
It's true. Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't expect to be as, like, hit by it emotionally as I was. I didn't expect it to punch me in the gut in a way that, like, to be honest, like, Discovery up to this point really hasn't. Right. In that kind of guttural, like, punch kind of way. So I was really into it and have nothing but good things to say about it. I think it's a classic little piece of Star Trek already.
But yeah, but it is also at the same time it's cool that we're exploring something new that we've never seen before, because we've never seen, Spock, Ensign Spock. So that feels fresh also. So I am such an advocate for these short treks because it allows us to really put the microscope on and kind of do something new in these types of situations in this time, even if it's just like, hey, let's do something with Ensign Spock. That's such a small little thing, but it can create such a great, impactful episode. So I love it.
Yeah. Did it bother you at all that Spock sang back?
No.
Didn't bother me at all either.
People
First of all,
yeah.
Go ahead.
And people say that he is so emotionless in TOS. If you really look for it, you see emotions. The gym, the thing, and this is in like old Trek, the Goldie's Trek, that he emotes in TOS, in the movies. This is nothing new. This is not Spock out of character. Please, no.
Particularly early TOS. Like, go back to the
Yes.
first few episodes. And yeah, some of it is like, it's Nimoy like kind of mastering the performance and figuring it out, sure.
Yeah.
But he's not. This is Ensign Spock. This is long even before that. Like,
Yes.
And he's the lesson he's kind of learning here is, number one, feels, especially in a position of command and power, that there are things she has to hold like to herself and can't show, protective of, and that's the struggle Spock goes through. And I think it refines that lesson in him, and it's something I assume he carries with him, through his career and into his life.
And
like I said, I relate to that, and I think it works for the character. And Spock singing back to her is him saying, "I get it. I'm the same.
we are the same." Yeah.
Yes, like we have the same struggle. That's perfect. I just think it worked completely.
And it's Discovery, or not Discovery. I don't know what to call this. The new Trek.
Yeah.
It's altering my perspective on old episodes and changing them.
Yeah.
I just watched Galileo 7. That's one of the first times we see Spock in command of an away mission, and he talks about his command, logical, which direction he's going to go. So it changes my perspective on that episode because of this short track.
That's the dirty little secret of the Galileo 7 is he's trying really, really hard to be logical and unemotional. But guess what? He's emotional the whole time.
Yes, because he's going to die.
The entire time. Yeah. He's failing at being completely unemotional and logical. He's trying really, really hard, but it doesn't work. And he's not even successful at it. Every decision he makes, for the most part, throughout that episode,
illogical,
has some hinge has some hinge of emotion to it.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's just a false assumption that Spock is unemotional. I think he's very emotional and is under constant pressure to bottle it in as much as he can, and he's trying really, really hard. And this is not anything new. Nimoy himself would say this in interviews and stuff. He's the most emotional guy on the ship.
Yes.
He just has to bottle it as much as he can.
Yep.
So, and it flat out worked for me. Q&A is awesome, and it's some of the best new Star Trek that there's been, I think.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. What about The Trouble with Edward, which you watched literally about two seconds before we started recording this?
Yes.
So I kind of think I know what you think.
Super fresh for me. Just take this with a grain of salt. Super fresh, like Bill said. I just watched this literally before we started the stream.
Seconds before we started.
Yes. I did not like it. I think it felt a little rushed. It felt a little all over the place. They may have tried to be a little bit too cute with the tribbles and stuff. Again, this is really fresh. I've only watched it once. And maybe because it was shouldered with this great short track called Q&A. So my expectations were high because if they were rolling out the first episode or the first short track was Q&A, and then they come back with this, I was definitely expecting a lot. Let's see, some positives. I loved the atmosphere. I love them exploring crew change. We talked about crew change a little bit with Trekkie Rob. I liked it in that regard. I love exploring not our usual suspects. It was kind of fun to see, people actually working. This was kind of like a day-to-day, as far as more than not just day-to-day. It was it was day to day Star Trek, which I love. But I don't know. Am I way off basis? I haven't read
No,
anything on Twitter. I haven't done
you are
anything.
not.
Okay.
No, I mean, I literally I haven't even looked at the results. I just posted my typical polls
Yeah.
for both of these short tracks, like while you were watching it, before we started. So I don't know what the overall response has been, but there has definitely been some pushback to the trouble with Edward from what I've seen. Some notable presences on Twitter for Star Trek, or the population of people that we tend to associate with, have some have not been fans. I personally would say that I think this is the biggest misfire of new Trek of since Discovery,
Yeah.
since in the CBS All Access era of Trek. I think this is the biggest misfire, biggest flop that they've kind of produced. I think I agree with everything you said. I love the setup of it. I love the idea of
Yeah.
it's sort of kind of laying the groundwork for kind of what they're I think aiming to do with like Lower Decks.
Yes.
Like let's find the most insignificant, specifically designed, like it's a little science research ship that it looks like a flick of it looks like a flea compared to the Enterprise. Like it's this little insignificant thing
Yeah.
that's like specifically assigned to like a sector
Like
of space.
10 crewmen on there.
To,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very insignificant ship. I like the idea of like following a crewman that from like a science post on the Enterprise to captaining a ship like this. I like what they're trying to do with that crew, but I think it's a little too in love with itself in terms of like let's do all the old Trouble with Tribbles sight gags with the Tribbles kind of like building up and the captain sitting on one, and like it feels an awful lot like somebody somewhere said, man, I really love the Trouble with Tribbles. I think we should like recapture some of that and do it our way. But I think what they do with the Tribbles, like as far as Tribbles are one of those things that more backstory is not helpful. I don't think anybody needs to know like why they reproduce so quickly, and I think that's a mistake to play with that too much. I think the Tribbles are kind of hallowed ground, and just they're not a big enough presence in Trek. They're a cute little aside in a couple of episodes. They don't need a ton of backstory. We don't need to know all these things about them, and we don't need to get overly cute with reverse engineering reasons for why the Tribbles are the way they are.
Yes.
So
there's other.
I think that's a problem fundamental to it. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's other aspects of Trek that I would love to see explored more.
Sure.
That's an insignificant thing. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I'm a canon porn kind of guy. I like usually getting backstory and like filling gaps and finding ways to play with what's been done before. But the Tribbles are not on the list of things that I'm like eager to learn more about their backstory and why they are what they are. I think they're fine the way they were. And on top of that, I think that the episode has a real problem with I don't think the characters are particularly likable. I think the captain doesn't take Pike's advice. She goes and in her conversation dismissing the science officer who's not particularly likable himself, who does all this, Edward. I don't think she conducts herself well in that conversation. Very dismissive, very condescending to him. And Pike kind of gives her advice about not everybody's on your level. You can't treat everybody the same, and she doesn't really follow that. So I'm not a big fan of that character. I don't like Edward. I appreciate what they're going for. I like any attempt to like explore. Not everybody's the best. Not everybody's like on the line. Yeah. Like that's fine. That's great. That's a good idea. I'm open-minded to that for sure. But I think this episode plays really into the let's play with tone. Let's go extremely silly. Which is what they've kind of said they like to do with the short treks. They want to not be tied down to like doing stereotypical Star Trek stuff. They want to play with tone and do different vibes and things. But I think this pushes too hard into the silly territory. I hope Lower Decks is better than this as far as like putting us on a ship where it's not the best and the brightest, and I hope they are more accomplished.
Yeah.
Than what
But I think you hit the nail on the head, though. This is what short tracks are for, right? This
Yeah.
is for the writers. This is for the team, the CBS All Access team, to explore, test what doesn't work, what works. Okay, now we know that doesn't. We went too far over this line. Maybe reel it back in, and then that will trickle down into the series, and we'll just get a better series. Because I mean, this sort. I'll put it in baseball terms because it's kind of baseball season, kind of football. This is batting practice. Short tracks are for batting practice. We're practicing. When it comes to the big game, we're ready to do our jobs. So, it is a misstep, but I guess that's what I think short tracks should be. Now, I'm not saying that all short tracks should be missteps. I'm just saying that they're exploring it and they're testing things out. So
I think it's a mistake to get too. If you are in our camp of thinking that this was maybe a misfire and a misstep and not particularly good, I think it's a mistake to get too fired up about that. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's 15 minutes of Star Trek. It's an aside. It's not the end of the world that they they blew one. And like I was talking about this earlier, back in the old days when there were 26 episode seasons.
Yeah.
How
many stinkers did we get? You know?
15 minutes into an episode. I remember there were times 15, 20 minutes into an episode. I remember sitting there watching Extinction from Enterprise.
Yeah.
And 15 minutes in, knowing, man, this thing's a dog. This episode
Yeah.
like, it's not. It happens. It happens when you do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not. You're not going to bat 1,000. There are going to be times where, and there are episodes of Discovery that, in hindsight, and as context has grown, and I've gone back and watched it over and over and again, that I think don't hold up as well. So it's not. You're not gonna hit every single time.
Yeah.
And to me, this is a clear miss, just like Prophet and Lace is a clear miss, and Extinction's a clear miss, and Precious Cargo and Aquiel. Like, there's plenty of these in Star Trek's history. It's just another one in that line of of dogs that the intentions were good, and nobody tries to make anything that doesn't work. And maybe it works for some people out there. I'm sure there are people, when I go to look at this poll, I'll probably be shocked that there are a lot of people who dig it. And that's great. I hope people do. Didn't work for me, especially in the Aftermath Q&A.
But there are positives. Like, we're not bashing this. We definitely talked about a few things that we liked, which we can do in pretty much anything. Episode. So
except maybe Code of Honor.
Yeah, except maybe that.
But usually there is something.
I guess maybe we should just leave it at that as far as coverage of
the trouble with Edward.
Yes. Again, the ending was weird too. I'll just put that out there. I didn't like the dialogue at the end, but
me neither.
Whatever. Moving on. My last point. We're getting close to an hour on this. Maybe a few questions at the end, but
sure.
Bill, how are you loving the amount of content? Do you think this is too much, too little? Because, I mean, when you think about it, there's a lot that got rolled out, that got announced this weekend. And we could maybe potentially be, seeing this type of kind of strategy rollout of things soon to come. So, what do you think of the sheer amount of content, the direction? Because again, go back, a couple of years, we were, in the desert, not getting anything.
It's exciting. I think it definitely felt packed on Saturday. I was kind of following along on my phone, and there's panels where actors and producers and all are talking, and they're talking about, there's a Short Trek live on CBS All Access right now, and there's trailers dropping. It was overwhelming on Saturday. But I think it's the first indication of what they're kind of aiming for. I think in 2020 we're going to get a calendar year that is full of a lot of Trek. I think we're going to get, starting in January, we're going to get 10 weeks of Picard. I think not too hopefully long after that, we're going to get 13 weeks of Discovery, and maybe by the end of the year we'll get some Lower Decks. So I think it's going to come pretty consistently, and I think
This is the year of Trek.
yeah, I think this is we're going to see sort of the plan culminating uh, with a lot of content dropping kind of consistently, and I'm excited about it. What's encouraging to me is, as evidenced by these short tracks and the difference between what we saw in the Picard trailer and the Discovery trailers. I think each show is going to be its own animal. I don't think it's going to be, more of the same, different flavors of sort of the same thing. Um, with each show, I think they're very unique. I presume they're going to be very unique animals,
Yeah.
Which I think is to the benefit of the whole. I think it'll be beneficial for the longevity of it to have it be fresh and to get to move from 10 weeks of Picard into 13 weeks of Discovery and feel like we're getting something really different. So that's the most encouraging thing. If it felt like a lot of the same stuff, I'd be a little bit more concerned that burnout might be a risk here with so much and people kind of taking it for granted. But what do you think? Are you excited?
The reason why I bring it up is because I was just so overwhelmed on Saturday because I try to kind of calm down, kind of recenter myself because I remember them talking about like the first ever Kelvin timeline, bringing back Trek for the first time. And it's astonishing to fast forward those 10 years or however long it's been to where we are now. Like how did we get here?
It's true. It's really true. We got animated shows in the works. We're getting Patrick Stewart back as Picard, sharing scenes with Frakes as Riker and Sirtis as Troy. Like, it's crazy. We're getting all that. We're seeing shots of Picard and Data painting with Starfleet uniforms on, like things like that coming back, and then being 3 years into Discovery, and like I said, animated shows on the way. They're still talking about Section 31. They're still hinting at Pike stuff. Every time they go up on a stage, there's always like a wink, wink, nod, nod about Pike. And I think these short tracks have just made people even more hungry. I think the best the 30 seconds of the short track this week was the stuff with Anson Mount as Pike at the beginning of it on the Enterprise. So like these short tracks are doing nothing but making people's appetite for that even more intense. And there was an interview on Trek Core about CBS and Pinewood Studios is expanding in Toronto, and somebody asked Kurtzman, like, are you involved in that? Like, is there more space coming your way? And they were like, well, yeah, we have new stages going up. And they said, well, what's that for? And they chuckled and were like, well, we can't say. And that obviously leads to a lot of speculation about what's going on up there. So there's more and more coming. It's going to be interesting to see as they continue to add shows how they chart it out. Does Discovery have an end date here? Is season 3 the end? Do they have a plan for how long Discovery is going to be here? Is another show going to replace Discovery, or are they just going to kind of keep them coming and aim to eventually be able to populate 52 weeks of the year with different track? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how they play it, and as long as they play their cards right, and I think they embrace the need to be different and not repeat themselves tonally and style storytelling and all that stuff, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah. I mean, mini freak out aside, I do think that they've set up a good foundation to just do just that. None of the shows really feel as similar as maybe 90s era Trek does so far.
Sure.
So, yeah. Sorry that I freaked out a bit, but yeah.
No, you're true. I mean, everything you said is 100%. I pinch myself all the time because it feels like not that long ago that, it was a desert between the end of Enterprise and the beginning of Discovery. There were 3 movies that were pretty well spaced out and a lot of uncertainty about even them. A lot of wait time between each one. And when they arrived, they were always controversial, and there was a lot of infighting, and there's a lot of infighting now, but in the fan community about Discovery and all the stuff that's going on now. But at least there's so much of it now, and like you said, it's constantly kind of coming at us. It's such a different environment than it was just a few years ago, where there was seemingly nothing and no real future. Now we're looking at a year of multiple shows and different kinds of shows, and Patrick Stewart. You know, it's just it's like you said. It's how did we get here is really the question.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Glad we did.
To think about that they're polling from, 53, however long it is. The Romulan ship, the design it looks so classic. It was awesome, and they're still pulling from that. But
that was great too.
Yeah.
That's awesome in our trailer. Didn't expect that.
Yeah, but it's just crazy to think that where we started and where we are now. It's crazy, and that some people's fandom is just starting with Discovery and with Picard and with Lower Decks. They don't even know the whole universe that they're just stepped into. So
and there are fans that we don't even know yet. We're still doing this, and we will be in the years to come.
Yep.
We could be talking to people who are just now getting to know Star Trek, through some of these things. That's exciting.
Yeah. Bill and I are trying to say and summarize is what a time to be a Star Trek fan. I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up here. If Bill, you don't have anything else.
Nah, I got nothing.
Cool.
It's exciting times, like you said. Is really the sum up for all this stuff. It's amazing how much we have coming our way.
Yeah. So the discussion does not have to stop here. Pop over to our Twitters, Facebook. The Discord server is great for talking one-on-one with everyone there, and Bill and I. So definitely check that out. We'll be back next week, most likely a solo with just me. I've got some fun stuff in the works for you guys. Bill's out of town that weekend. He's on Ryza. He probably will be in chat, so
that's the idea.
It should be a really fun episode. So we'll see you guys next week live, hopefully. Got nothing else to say.
Yep. Me neither. Appreciate everybody watching, whoever watches.